So the customer states their vehicle's a no start. Well, okay, but what kind of no start? Because a no start and a no crank no start are two completely different diagnostic paths. And if you don't identify the symptom right out of the gate, you're going to spend a lot of time chasing the wrong systems. Welcome to GrimmBilt. I pay somebody to screw it up and you can screw it up yourself. Maybe even learn something in the process. The very first thing you do on a no start is classify the failure. Does it crank or does it not crank? Because the answer to that question changes everything. So if I attempt to start the vehicle and the crankshaft doesn't turn, I'm thinking battery condition, starter operation, grounds, relays, ignition switch inputs, anti-theft systems, voltage drop, cable integrity, park neutral inputs, maybe the engine is seized, maybe even control side issues. At this point, I'm trying to figure out why the engine cannot actually crank. That's a no crank, no start. But if I attempt to start the vehicle and the vehicle actually does turn over, that's pretty important because now I've verified that not only does the starter and everything that operates the starter intact, but also the engine has the physical capability of turning over. And that immediately changes the diagnostic direction completely. So now I'm thinking fuel delivery, spark, injector pulse, airflow, compression, mechanical valve timing, RPM signal, not to be confused with crank signal, different sensor inputs, or again, maybe even an immobilizer issue. Now I'm diagnosing why the engine can rotate but not run. Completely different diagnostic path. One important disclaimer here is that sometimes a failure can cross over into different diagnostic paths. Immobilizers are a pretty good example of this because depending on the manufacturer, some will just disable crank authorization, while others will disable things like fuel delivery system, injector pulse, and ignition system. So an immobilizer system can in fact present as a no start or a no crank no start, and this depends heavily on the vehicle. That's why knowing the system strategy matters. The good news is that immobilizer faults usually leave some sort of a clue. Security indicators, authorization statuses, theft-related DTCs, fuel-related data, injector pulse, RPM signal. So most of the time, if you know what system you're looking at, you can identify an immobilizer fault pretty quickly. But seriously though, don't guess, verify. Make sure to do that before you dig out the fancy scan tool or start loading the parts cannon. Verify the basics: battery voltage, powers, grounds, connections, fuses, because a shocking amount of these complex no-start issues ended up being low battery, bad ground, poor connection, blown fuse, things of that nature. And I get it. People skip the fundamentals because it's kind of boring. But the fact of the matter is, fundamentals fix vehicles every day. So once I identify the type of no start, I go back to the fundamentals. What does an engine need to run? Air, fuel, compression, ignition, and the right timing. So instead of just replacing parts, I start asking, what is this thing missing? And that question alone will save you thousands of dollars and tons of time over the course of your career. And this is the fork in the road when technicians either become a diagnostician or a professional guesser. So don't go replacing parts because they may have failed. Test the system. Verify command signals, voltage integrity, grounds, fuel pressure, injector pulse, spark output, RPM data, and mechanical integrity. And finally, verify the repair, not just it actually started once. Actually verify the repair. Was it heat related, connection related, intermittent, vibration related? Because if you don't understand why it failed, there's a good chance that vehicle's coming back. Every no start follows a pattern. So identify the symptom, define the system, verify the failure, then verify the repair. And that's one method you can incorporate to keep you from guessing. Anyways, if you've enjoyed this content, like, subscribe, or just roast me in the comments. Whatever, man. Good time for everyone.